You're listening to Fast Facts, Ask the Expert with Tom Viola. Welcome everyone into Fast Facts, Ask the Expert. We have Tom Viola here talking about local anesthesia. And this one, Tom, I got another stumper for you. This one's interesting because I feel like I'm regularly bombarded with the ads about buffered anesthetics on going through my social media feed. Well, the thing I don't understand about them is like, what are they? How do they work?
Absolutely, my friend. It's always a pleasure answering your questions, Andrew, because they're good ones. They're always good ones. And I like the chance to stump me, man. This is a lot of chemistry here, so I hope we're all prepared, okay? If you've got a cup of coffee, take an extra sip right now while you're listening. Because really what we're talking about is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. You know, every cartridge of local anesthesia that you inject contains acid. Acid is necessary to keep the anesthetic in its water-soluble form, which is the most stable form of the anesthetic agent, really for shelf life. But the problem, as I'm sure you all realize, is when you're injecting local anesthesia that contains acid, you're not only injecting local anesthesia, you're injecting acid. And so you know that adding acid to the tissue drives down the pH and makes the environment more inhospitable for the local anesthetic agent to do its job. So buffering local anesthesia or buffered anesthesia approaches it from the perspective of, yes, we will inject the anesthetic agent that's been sitting in a cartridge in an acidic solution all this time on the shelf, maintaining the shelf life, right, by keeping it in its water-soluble form with all that acid. But when we go to inject, we're going to introduce sodium bicarbonate into the cartridge to buffer that acid out. So upon injection, we're essentially injecting near neutral pH solution, and that should ultimately cause almost instantaneous onset. I've seen it work. I've seen it in action. I'm amazed at how quickly people are profoundly anesthetized. Now, there's two preparations out there. One incorporates sodium bicarb from a separate cartridge. So it's kind of like taking the anesthetic cartridge and the sodium bicarb cartridge and sort of mixing them together, right? And that is a very efficient way of including sodium bicarb into the solution because, you know, you're sort of removing some anesthesia and replacing it with some sodium bicarb solution that's been stabilized. It's good stuff. It works really well. The other one incorporates a proprietary cartridge that has a sodium bicarbonate reservoir that when it's inserted into the syringe and it's pierced, it releases sodium bicarb into the solution. Again, neutralizing the acid in the cartridge and delivering a near neutral pH solution for injection. So I like both. I like both approaches. I've seen some clinicians actually make their own, where they'll take a sodium bicarb multi-dose vial that's available in most distributors. You know, take a local anesthetic cartridge, push out some local anesthesia, insert the needle and pull up some sodium bicarb into the cartridge. Can't say that works very well. Don't know about stability. Don't know about, you know, multiple piercings of that bottle and all that stuff. So the do-it-yourself, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, you know, I'm not so sure about how well it's going to work in the long term. But the bottom line, which was shared with me by a few people who are native to this industry, is that it does more than buffer the acid in the cartridge, that the sodium bicarb actually, when it comes in contact with the acid, liberates carbon dioxide bubbles, which are very tiny and stay in solution for the most part, so that when you're injecting the buffered solution now, you're actually injecting some carbon dioxide bubbles into the tissue, and that's what starts the anesthetic process. Again, if I'm wrong, I hope somebody steps in and interjects and says, you know, that's not the way it works, Tom. You're dealing with old information. But I just found that fascinating because from a chemistry standpoint, it sort of makes sense. You know, you're combining an acid and a base. You're going to liberate this gas. And so why not make that work to your advantage? So I like buffered anesthesia. I think ultimately, you know, whenever I've done a course on anesthesia, I usually ask the audience, you know, what do you think about buffered anesthesia? A few hands go up. I think it's one of the most underutilized tools we have in dentistry. And I think ultimately anything we can do to increase patient comfort and increase anesthesia efficacy, you know, works for me.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you have it done on yourself?
Absolutely. I've already had it done on myself. And
Okay.
I mean, the profound anesthesia I achieved in mere seconds convinced me for, you know, forever that this is a way to go, especially if you have difficulty anesthetizing patients.
Yeah, so you're a believer. Great. Tom, thank you so much for being here today. Where can people find you?
They can find me anywhere on social media at Pharmacology Declassified and on my website at tomviola.com.
Thank you for listening to Fast Facts Ask the Expert. If you have a topic you'd like one of our experts to answer, simply email me, Andrew at ataleoftwohygienist.com, and we will get it on the air as soon as possible. Thanks for listening.